Wonderful, thanks. All right, good evening, everybody. For the pizza, that was a nice surprise. I was wondering what we might have for snacks. I'm really glad that you're all back and that you haven't been scared off by meeting number one. So it's great to see you all again. Tonight's meeting is going to be a lot more group work than we did last time. Last time we were kind of getting to know each other a little bit. I was doing some of the recording so that you all could think and speak freely and take turns. So we'll have some small group work, some large group work. So we're kind of broken out into thirds for this meeting. So we'll start the first third of the meeting with some background information, go into some small group work, and then come back and share some ideas, and then end the meeting with some large group brainstorming. Tonight's goals are really to get us thinking about who lives in our community, who our patrons are, and who our patrons could be. I will probably use the word patron and customer interchangeably, but just know that libraries always think of the people who visit them, use their materials, come to their programs as patrons. But customers is just sort of another word that I think helps us understand that these are people who are getting benefits and utilizing the library materials and resources. So know that I respect the word patron as a library practitioner and as a library educator, but customer sometimes just jumps out of my mouth. So sorry about that. So we'll be thinking about who those patrons could be, and then we'll kind of end the night thinking about what we want to learn from them as we transition into talking about our community survey and our community listening sessions. So hopefully one of these two prompts speaks to you, maybe a country mouse, city mouse situation. I certainly like both, but hopefully the view from whichever one you like is as lovely as these are. So we're in meeting number 2. As I noted, this is what we'll be up to tonight. The fancy words about what we're going to be talking about is kind of looking a little bit backwards and talking about the previous strategic plan. We're going to take a look at some demographics. Then we'll get into some fun playing pretend using our imaginations and journey mapping. And like I said, ending our meeting with those questions. So the previous strategic plan had these 5 pillars, I think is what they were called in the previous plan, Jennifer. We touched on this briefly at our last meeting, but I want to reset the stage with that strategic plan. Again, starting in the most auspicious year of 2020 and taking us through this year. The strategic plan itself is linked in our PowerPoint here, so I can pull that up if you want me to. Otherwise, we've got these pillars of programming, community hub, services and collections, marketing and awareness, and structural health. So one of the things that I like to do is what we call a heat check. So thumbs up means we're doing great. Thumbs to the side kind of means like we're okay, so-so. And of course, thumbs down means exactly what we think it does. It's sort of the, we're not doing great. So if you're looking at these 5 pillars, what does your gut check tell you right now? Do you feel like leaving the end of the strategic plan, you feel whatever you know about the library, you feel great about it, you feel so-so about it, or you maybe feel thumbs down about it? And you can go ahead and be honest, because only I can see you. No one else can see you. So yeah, where do you feel? Where do you feel on that scale? Thumbs up, thumbs up? Okay, and I think a lot of what we talked about last month in our notes really reflected that we're really moving from a position of strength, so it's great to see that you feel that way. There might be parts of the previous plan that didn't go to plan or didn't maybe reach all the way through all of the objectives that you had. But Jennifer, if you want to cover a handful of things that might be relevant to our moving forward process, what would be good for us to know as we start talking tonight about our patrons, demographics, and what we want to learn from our community?
Well, I think with this previous strategic plan, we really touched on things that we hadn't done before. So like the outreach portion of it. The virtual, we went virtual for a year. Which is great. In the beginning, it was met with ferocious optimism by people, but I think everybody had tech fatigue by the time the pandemic started winding down and didn't want to have anything to do with virtual stuff and wanted in person. I think we saw that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think it's going to be important for us to look at the demographics. I think there's a lot that they can tell us about the people that we serve and how we can serve them better. Barry, Mike, do you want to jump in?
This came up in the library board meeting yesterday when we were talking about how some things have changed. We had a not very good relationship with the city. We were like the stepchild, right? We were had to have, but didn't really have a lot of open communication. Over the last couple of years, that's done a complete 180. Now we have really strong relationships across the board with individual department heads. For the first time ever, the mayor came to one of our meetings saying, hey, I want you to know that we're behind the library and what types of things can we do to help make it better. And then that became like show me the money for starters, because there's lots of things that we want to do, and that's really what's holding us back. There's no lack of ideas.
Yeah.
But it's really a matter of resources. So from that standpoint, we're optimistic in that now we're also have those types of resources behind us.
Okay. And was there something specific that shifted that you feel it tilted that towards a better relationship? Specific individuals changing over, or specific strategy changing?
Well, I think some of that, but I think it was also effort on the library board's part to just like, if they're not going to come to us, we have to go to them. Right, so it's like, okay, if we're going to get what we want from the city, then we have to make sure that we sell our strategic plan to them at a council meeting, right? That we get there, we get in front of them, and we say, this is what we're all about. And there were a lot of things that they didn't know. There's still stuff that comes up where she says, I didn't know that about the library. So we're starting to build relationships in places where we really need them.
Okay, so I'm hearing some self-advocacy, speaking up for the library, taking proactive action on behalf of the library. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything that's really important to leave behind from this plan? Things that you feel like we did it, we checked it off, and it's part of what we do now, and so it's no longer relevant.
I can't think it. They're all still very important.
I think it's still important, but I think something that you guys show over and over, you just succeed at and you do well, and you check yourself with consistently by doing your surveys and I think programming is something that shouldn't have to necessarily be in the plan anymore.
I would agree. It is our kind of our bread and butter,
Right.
And it is super important. But I don't know if it needs to be in our strategic plan if we continue to do it what we're doing.
Correct.
I don't know how much we can improve on what we're doing without hiring about 5 more librarians.
And so
Which is not going to happen. So
maybe not a pillar,
Not
but
a pillar, but a part.
a direction or an objective that you use to obtain something else in a pillar.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's important, but I don't know if it needs to be a pillar.
Yeah, you guys have a checks and balance kind of system that you do to make sure the programming is the appropriate programming, and like you do it well, all the way around.
Are there areas of what took place in the previous strategic plan that you think, didn't get finished or didn't get addressed with the right resources or effort or time?
one I could say would be marketing and awareness. I don't know. Somehow, it's like Mike said, I'm always amazed when I meet people in the community and they don't know something that they should know about the library. And
Yeah.
I'm like, we put things in the city newsletter, we have our own library newsletter.
Yeah.
We have an electronic newsletter, although we're in the process of revamping that. That will start up again.
It's possible that because of the community that we have, unlike some other communities where a library is almost essential. You know, we were talking yesterday about, do we continue to have hoopla at its cost, which is like, people can afford their own cable, they can afford their own streaming service. You know, are there lots of things that people in Franklin just do on their own, so they don't see the library as being important, right? If you have a family, if you have kids, oh my gosh, yes. Or if you're looking for a place to meet, or you just want to, you know, hang out, you need technology. There's all sorts of, if there's a need, they're there. Otherwise, if you can handle it on your own, those are the people that probably don't know that much about it, but there may be something for them here.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a great philosophical question that definitely will play into some of the data that we'll look at here in a couple minutes. When we think about what true community needs are, right? There are lots of wants, but what are the true community needs? So that's a very good question. And both of you are talking about things that library clients of mine, big, small, urban, suburban, rural, are all talking about. There's not enough marketing and awareness, that your resources are finite, that if you had 5 more staff, you could do X number more programs or X number more outreach visits, and all of those, you know, could use improvement, and yet, you know, you're maximizing what you're capable of, you're maximizing what you have really, really well. And so there's that tension between how do you know, we're not a business, right? We can't say, well, we'll kick up our programming by 10% each year and hooray, we'll be a success. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I think any organization, or I'll say nearly every organization, says they don't have enough marketing.
Yeah.
I've, over my career, come to the conclusion you can never say something enough, because not everybody is listening when you speak. And a lot of organizations don't measure the effectiveness of their outreach programs. So you may be saying that you're reaching out in a particular manner, but is anybody paying attention to that matter? And so is your communication getting received? And it might be helpful to, and this is true of all kinds of organizations, to understand the effectiveness of your outreach. To say that which is effective we want to do more of, and that which is not effective we may not want to have to keep doing.
Yeah, not just the output of we did 100, but what are the outcomes of,
How many people responded to
Right.
what you said? And was
Right.
it because the program wasn't desired? Or was it because your communication plan didn't reach the right audience?
yeah,
And you talked about, we're going to talk about who the community is. That might help you understand what type of, how do you speak to that? How do you reach that community?
I agree that tracking is really an important part, to look at the programs, look at activities, how many people attended, and about is Melinda Myers, when she had her presentation here about gardening, it drew in how many.
It was over 100.
Yeah.
It was, the room was full, there was a line down the hall, that brought in new people who may not be familiar with the law. And that's an opportunity to introduce them and bring them back in. If that's so successful, bring them back in with other relevant topics. That was a success.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And tying that too to what Paul's saying is, I think most of us in the room know who Melinda Myers is, right? So she has a following. So people are going to think, oh, where will she be? Oh, that's near me. That's, an easy drive, or that's my community. And so that recognition of her as an entity or a brand, I hate to call people a brand, but right, she has that identity and that matches with the people that are desiring to hear her content. And on the flip side, right, people like your library, they like the content, they might not know Melinda Myers, but they think, okay, good match. So you've got that really nice overlap of the topic, the speaker, and both of those things are merged for a successful program like that. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
And just using that example, I don't believe we needed to have any kind of registration for that. So we really weren't sure where these people were coming from. They may have primarily been coming from Franklin, but then
Yeah.
again, maybe not. Maybe they were from the surrounding communities, which is also very important, very
Yeah.
helpful.
To that end, it might be helpful to not only where are people coming from, but how did they hear about the program?
Yes.
Because that tells you the effectiveness of your marketing program. And it's not hard when you get a group of people together at the beginning or at the end, or a break in the middle to say, what brought you here today? What was it? Was it the friend that told you about it, or did you see it? Because that's gonna tell you how effective your marketing is.
People don't wanna stop and have to give you all that
What,
information.
well, I was gonna say,
Yeah, I
what
wouldn't-
data do you collect when you have, sort of your regular programming and a regularly scheduled events and then something that's, kind of a one-off program like that? What's the data that you would collect in those
We have a
situations?
very short survey,
Okay.
because we don't want to make it super long.
Yeah.
We won't fill it out.
Yeah.
It basically just has like, it's more about the specific program that they're at.
Yeah, and we don't put that out at every program.
We need to be a little better. But one of the questions is like, what kind of additional program would you like to see?
Mhm.
And it's so funny because it's
Usually
usually.
it's the same thing, it's whatever program they came to. I want more of these.
If they came to
So if they
music
came to
program-
painting, they want more painting. If they come to
came to
music, they
gardening,
want more.
more gardening.
So we
If they
really,
came to cooking,
I
they
don't
want more
know, part of
cooking.
me thinks we could probably drop that, because
Yeah.
I've looked through
It's not
hundreds of
helpful.
surveys,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really give me any
Yeah.
additional information.
Okay,
Maybe
that's
if
a
you put,
nugget
like,
for me to think
Any
about.
programs besides the one you came to tonight.
Right, or anything not, you never see at the library, and then at the same
Yeah.
time, like even if I put something out on Facebook, I did a
Mhm.
programming survey on Facebook, and we had a good amount of responses.
Mhm.
Half of it was like, I don't come to programming because I can't make it, it's not at a time I can make it. And one of the other questions was, would you prefer to have programming on the weekdays during the day, weeknights, or weekends? And the majority of people said weeknights. Guess how many people we get for weeknight programming
Yeah,
every
yeah.
time we offer it? Far less than we
Yeah.
get during the day, because the senior citizens love to come to the library, and they have the time to
During the
come to
day.
the library, and they want to come during the day.
That's
right.
Mhm.
So when we offer the programming that we do during the day at night, they don't want to come,
Yeah.
and they specifically tell us, well, I'd prefer if you did this during the day, or I like it when you do it during the day.
Okay.
And we're trying to reach a different demographic, but they're not coming because they
They
say
have-
they would come, but
Right.
as a parent with children, there's
Not coming.
no way I would come to a library program after work. I'm exhausted.
Right? You gotta put dinner on.
Exactly, I have to make
Right.
dinner,
And run the kids to events
Yeah.
and do homework
so it's a
or
really
whatever.
hard
Yeah.
thing to try and attract a different demographic. Weekend programming hasn't necessarily been so successful for us either, with some exceptions.
I think your craft programs are.
I can't.
I know.
Okay. So this is a great topic for how we will end our meeting today. So I'm jotting all this down and I'm gonna put it in my little parking lot right here. Because we're actually getting at the heart of what do we wanna ask our community? And these are great, and I don't wanna forget them. I also don't wanna derail us too far away from the strategic plan. But I think we've honed in on something we wanna know about, but we have to ask a good question to find the answer to it. And so what I've got this captured as, we need to capture a little bit more about what's successful about our programming. So, where people came from, how they heard about it. And then we also need to find out what's the best time and sort of, the demographics of the program, right? Like the timing, the time of day, the
But I'll be
weekday.
honest, all of our programs are full. Like,
Yeah.
for the most part, they're all full. like, so we know these things. We know when the programming is successful. We know, it's not like we don't have people coming to our programs.
Well,
I mean,
and that's where it would be really interesting to ask a question in the survey and then compare it to your actuals.
Right.
You know, like if they're, again, I'm getting in the weeds here, but if you
Yeah.
ask a question of the people and they say, just like Carrie said, oh, we want it on weeknights, but then your data of actual attendance shows that, then,
Yeah,
then
like I
you
just
know
feel
that
like
you're-
our
you're on the
programming
right.
isn't an issue,
Yeah,
is what I'm
yeah.
trying to say, I guess.
I
I
don't think
agree
the
with you.
programming's the issue, it's the same people coming to every single program all the time and then
And not
filling
the
up.
different.
And not, and new people can't come in.
Yeah,
So how can we attract those new people?
yeah. And again, tying back to Paul, how do we reach other audiences,
Yeah.
right? How do we reach those
we
new
also
people?
come into the problem of not having enough money
Yeah.
and librarians
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
to hold,
18 craft programs a month.
right, to where you could offer them during the day and at night.
And on the weekends.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, our budget is tight.
Now, when you
So.
say programs are full, does that mean you've run out of space for them?
No,
Is it
like,
physical
the
space?
people are
Both.
full,
Both.
yeah.
Yeah,
We
I
don't have
mean-
any more space for people,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you should
Yeah.
answer this, I don't.
Yeah, I
care.
mean, for like the craft afternoons, we do them in the Create Space, we have 40 chairs.
Okay.
And we have been letting 30 people in, but this summer, I'm gonna up it to 40 and we're gonna pack them in there because they're so popular. Sarah and I do very popular cooking programs. Food's expensive.
Mhm.
I think everybody knows that. We can't do a cooking, and we can't make food for 100 people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
no, I can't, I would quit. I would quit.
Why would they
If
come?
only you could sell VIP seats so that.
Right? Hey, maybe we should.
You're charging too and they're still coming.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, even the big children's
I do just
programs
want
that
clarity for
are
the
the
benefit of our
Yeah.
group too about structural health. Is there anything in that zone that needs attention, or needs carrying over?
Well, we still have ongoing building issues,
Mhm.
you know, things that roof leaks.
Buildings never get younger.
No.
I was gonna say, I feel
HVAC.
like services and collections and structural health are both something that's constantly changing, and so those are like just ongoing changing things that are just something that you always have to keep up with.
Yeah.
So they kind of have to stay active within the plan.
And I am certain that in talking with the staff and the board, there'll be some easily identifiable priorities in that zone that maybe won't come up in these conversations as deeply, but that we'll be able to identify. And whether this becomes, you know, again, whether the format mirrors what we did here in 2020 to 2024, that is something that is important because that infrastructure, the organizational health, the physical health of the building, all those are important to meeting your objectives. Anything else to summarize this section, Jennifer?
Which one, this?
Anything here, just talking about the strategic plan, otherwise we'll move on to
You know, I think
demographics.
for services and collections, we haven't really touched on that or community hub. You know, will the community hub still be as big a emphasis as Franklin maybe moves towards a more centralized downtown area at 76th and Lawson?
Yeah.
Services and collections, you know, looking at physical media, what's gonna
Mhm.
happen to that? As Carrie and I were talking about the audio books, you know, people buy cars, they don't even have audio, you know, CD
Yeah.
players in them anymore.
Yeah.
Same with the music, we didn't even talk about that.
And
but
music too,
CDs, yeah.
So that's something that's changing.
Yeah, that's,
That needs to, I mean, there's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to stay there, but they're changing.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that the strategic plan didn't get completed, it's just that it's constantly changing.
Yeah, things happen in
Yeah.
a, in
And same
a
with
5-year
community health,
span.
like Jennifer just said, like the community is changing, so.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's also, you know, part of the strategy of the plan is can it adapt when things come up that we don't know about? Like, you know, 2020, I'm sure a lot of things happened that year that you couldn't plan for. But the flexibility within the plan and how you know, what the goals are. Some goals just get scratched off and you go, all right, not possible.
Yeah, we did a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's A-okay. It's not a test. You don't get an A on it or a completion. You know, you don't get a completion score. It's to guide your work the best you can and meet the mission the best you can. So how many of you can be honest, got a chance to peek at these statistics? Okay, great, good. The goal here is not testing anybody, so and none of you have to be statisticians or mathematicians. Some of you will have experiences that as we look at this data, you'll go yeah, that checks out. And then you'll look at some of this data and think, that's not what I thought this was gonna say. And of course, we know that data can't capture everything about the individuals that live and work and visit your library. But by the same token, this can help set the stage for a productive conversation when we recognize kind of the reality of what's around us. One limitation of what we're going to look at today is this doesn't include future projections. This is looking at the right now and the very recent past. So looking at future projections is going to be another conversation, but today we're kind of talking about the reality of the now. So hopefully this will link out here. Something went wrong. That's sad. Well, good news, it's easy to search.
It might be great. Yeah, mine's up, but it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
I think the census stuff, I'm amazed at how fast I feel like it's outdated. 'Cause I do feel like
Right?
I mean, most of it's exactly what I expected for Franklin. but-
Right. Well, and one of the things that immediately stood out to me, which shouldn't be a surprise because it's not like I live far away from you all, but is the reality of the map. You know, here is Waukesha County, here is Racine County, here's a library, there's 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 a library right here, there's probably a library right down here. So you have the great opportunity of some geographical density. You have the opportunity of some growing populations in and around your area. You have the ability of many of the people, as we'll see in some of the data, many of the people in your community drive and commute. So you have people who can get around, even if, there's maybe not a lot of public transportation that comes past the library. But this geography really tells us a story about, where we are situated in kind of a library-dense environment. And while we don't necessarily think of other libraries as competitors, we do think about how somebody's library usage might be split over multiple locations, or how sort of the invisible barrier here, individuals who might want to come to your library but don't qualify for a free library card because of laws, how that might be a barrier or a hindrance into attracting people to your community for things outside of your collection. So kind of, you've got your overview here. Just starting off with this, is there anything that jumps out at you about what you already see in the data? Yeah.
My personal experience, that there's almost an iron curtain at the southern border of the city. My social circle goes east to Oak Creek because I have a family member who lives there, and goes west to New Berlin because I have a family member who lives there. And I have many activities that I attend somewhere in Milwaukee County, but I have no knowledge of what's going on in Caledonia
So
or Racine or
yeah.
Kenosha.
Yeah.
I have almost no connection, and it's like there's an iron wall
Yeah.
on the southern border of the city.
Yeah.
And when I've been involved in conversations about why doesn't something happen, the answer is nobody lives south of the city. All the people are north, east, and west. And so if a retail operation is going to locate here, they would rather locate in Greendale or Greenfield.
Yeah. So you're kind of talking up in this zone.
That's where the people live.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that map were color-coded as to the density of people living, you would find the southern half of the city is growing, but there's still not a lot of people who live there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
I actually disagree with that.
Good.
Waterford and Burlington and Lake Geneva are like getting much more populated these days. These last couple of years, they're like, people are moving there because they want to be out of Milwaukee County.
Mm-hmm.
Do they
So-
come back this way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. But they would not be residing within Milwaukee County then,
Right.
right? I can't remember what county that is,
It's
but,
Racine County.
yeah. But yeah, so you
My
probably
kids have a
got,
lot of friends that live in Lake Geneva but go to
Yeah.
school in some of the parochial schools that are up there.
yeah,
Because they don't have a lot of like retail and stuff right there, so they do come up into here
Okay.
to
A
do that.
lot
yeah.
of them work. I mean, I talked to a
And
lot of
work through.
people who
Yeah.
take Loomis.
Yeah,
Up
that's it
here.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that's something as we scroll down a little bit farther that I'm curious about your perceptions about, but that average commuter time that we'll see in one of the, as we go further down, I think it was estimated at like average resident commutes about 25 minutes, which is a few minutes higher than the state average. And I do agree with you, Doris, that as people are exiting Milwaukee County, not only are they increasing their commuter time, but they may be changing from working in Milwaukee County but living in Racine or Waukesha County. Yeah, which also that fee card barrier really becomes an issue then. Yeah.
You know, in the mornings, there's a lot of rush hour traffic heading out from Franklin, downtown Milwaukee. I did that for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in the downtown area, so after work, you might utilize the restaurants and the activities in the downtown area, but you're not getting people coming from outside of Franklin, coming back to Franklin. There's not a draw. And I was really interested, I thought it was interesting how many people drive a car. And we do not have other options of transportation here in Franklin, so
Yeah.
we really need to have a car to get around
Mhm.
in
Oh, yeah.
Franklin. And the high level of home ownership, so people are settled.
Cost of
long-term.
home ownership.
Oh, yes.
Very much so. I'll give you an example. There's a major manufacturer here in Franklin. I had a tour of their plant a while ago, and I asked, so how many of your employees live in Franklin? He said, none. None.
Wow.
They all had to come into Franklin, and of course, there was no way to get there on public transportation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
wow,
And
that's-
probably a good job.
yes,
right?
you know,
I mean,
decent jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And feel free to jump, we can jump forward and backward at any point here. Okay, so we've got a population in people. We can see that the median age is just a little bit higher than the median age for Wisconsin. Right, and this chart here is where I wasn't surprised, but I was maybe more surprised than I expected to be. So the yellow are people that are identified here as female, male are in the blue. And if we put the cutoff here at, say, maybe 45 years old.
That's the divorce stage.
Well, it was also interesting to look at some of those divorce statistics too. But yeah, if we cut this off at about 45, there's a lot of lines up here. 85 and older is still a pretty robust category. It's not that far off of our 25 to
Those women
29 year
sure
olds.
live longer than those men.
So good news, longevity, right? Great news for
Well, we have a
Franklin.
lot of senior, we have a lot of senior places.
I was
Right, you
gonna-
have condos, you have senior living.
And I think that number will go way up on the next census because there's so many more have been built since. Right,
Yeah.
They don't live here.
no.
Yeah.
Because under that, they live with their parents
Right.
still.
Right.
And then once they're
And then
like
once
on their
they're
own, they
30.
can't afford it.
There's not too many 25, 29s in Denver.
Well, and that goes back to maybe your median household
Yeah.
income and your cost of housing as well.
Right, yeah,
That
they can't
maybe
afford it.
they live nearby, but they maybe don't live here.
Well, and there's nothing to do here, so why would
Yeah.
you want to live like here at that age, especially if you're
You
single
said it,
and
not
stuff?
me, but-
Yeah.
Well, and then it begs the question too, are the people here 30, 35, 40, are they people who grew up here and moved back? Or are they people who are moving here because it's a desirable suburban community and so they're living here in Franklin for the first time at these ages? So, and that's a question I don't know the answer to, but just throwing it out there. Yeah.
When I was working on our community health assessment a few years ago, so many people that I interviewed in that age range said they specifically moved to Franklin because of the school district.
Yeah.
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 That
Yeah,
would be my
until people are
suspicion as
finding
well.
out how crappy it is now and they're all
Yeah.
getting out of it.
And that's something too that kind of bore out in what we discussed at our last meeting too, right?
Over the last 5 years, the school district has started to go down, especially in the last like 3 years, it's going down fast.
I don't see that happening. Can you explain what you mean by that?
It means people are leaving the school district very quickly because they're not happy with,
You're talking about the employees.
no, families leaving, pulling their children out of the Franklin School District because it's become a not good school district.
Our facilities are like really, really down. Like everything is like very ranked low now. Like sports facilities, like the pool isn't even up to code. Like a lot of teachers are leaving because they aren't being like.
They're not being treated
Yeah, they're
well.
not being treated. The whole Spanish department had to be replaced. Like every single teacher, except for one, and she's still not even being treated correctly because there were like teachers who were getting allegations of like criminal behavior who had to be let go, and there were like so many things that
They
were
fired
making
a
this.
pregnant Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
she
yeah.
was like weeks away of going on maternity leave, and it's because students were harassing her.
Yeah.
And then they fired her.
Sounds like a student problem. Sounds like a parent problem.
Well,
Administrative.
it's a lot of administrative problems. They also have put in a policy into place where there's no punishment. So the bullying is up far worse than it's ever been, but they won't, I even went through the full appeals process and they won't call it bullying. Because then the school board has a zero tolerance policy for bullying. So then they would have to let those kids go, so they just call it other things. Yeah, I know like 5 families that have dropped out mid-year in the elementary schools and above, in all different elementary schools, it's not just one. They keep pulling good teachers out of the classrooms and then giving them 6-figure salaries and putting them up at the district level and calling them coaches. And I won't hire aides.
I will say one positive thing about Franklin, I think people move here for the natural, I mean, because it's very pretty here.
Yeah,
There's a, you know, if you wanna be close to the city,
Yeah.
they get kind of feel like you're in the country.
Yeah.
Franklin's a great place to live, it also has a great proximity to Chicago,
Yep.
you know, it doesn't,
It's quick to get on freeways, but it's not in the middle of freeways. There
Yeah.
isn't a bus line.
Yeah, I think
A lot of
that's a
people
big
do like
detriment. A lot of people like it.
Yeah.
And that's where growth can be really challenging. So
Right.
again, kind
It's
of closing the loop on the school
Yeah.
district, right? If you have a huge boom and the facilities and the staffing can't keep up with it, that can really create a challenge.
Right, it's the good and the bad
Yeah.
of the community.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
that
it
growth
keeps the
can,
crime down, but then you don't have anything here because
Well, I think too, like you said before, it's not attainable for a lot of people. That median income shocks me. That's the shockingest, I cannot believe that the median income in Franklin is $100,000.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
median income in Milwaukee is like $30,000.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
insane.
yeah. And one thing I do want to touch on here is language spoken at home. This did surprise me that this was a little bit higher than our state average. Not surprising in the percentage, but surprising that it was higher than the state average. I had thought it would be sort of at or about. So that does tell us a little bit. I know this print is really small, so that's why I'm leaning way over here. The other languages that are noted here in the data are Spanish, Indo-European languages, Asian and Pacific Islander languages, and then 1.7% of that is listed as other languages. So,
yeah, we got information, we get some of our information about this from the school district.
yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because their top languages are Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, Hindu. Spanish actually isn't even that high up there.
Spanish was on it, but it was like
Yeah.
the 4th one down.
Yeah, I feel like it was like 20 or.
So it is kind of
Does
interesting.
Indo-European mean like India?
I don't know,
I
this
don't
is
know.
20, but this is 2020, so
What
I
that
think that it's
means.
just changed that much.
And I don't know if you from the health department
I
have.
brought copies
I
of our
know.
health assessment.
All right.
So these were the direct ones from the school district. It said, what is it, 87% speak English in the home, but the other top languages by I'm, it's been a long day, I'm not
That's
taking
okay,
credit,
that's
but
okay.
The top one was Arabic, followed then by Spanish, followed by Urdu, followed by Punjabi, then Telugu, and then Chinese.
Yeah.
So Urdu or Arabic is obviously so many different countries and that have different dialects. Urdu would be Pakistani, which is, and then Hindu and Telugu would be India, and then Punjabi is I also speak that as well. It's India and Pakistan. There's this region that's like in the middle of both countries, so people from both countries speak it. If they're
Thank
from
you,
there.
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But is that included in the Indo-European language? Do you know that? If
Yeah,
that
that's a
is?
good question.
I think Indo-European, maybe Serbia. There are
Oh,
a lot
like
of
the,
Serbians.
like
Yeah.
the Eastern European?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a
Oh yeah,
lot
there
of
is. That's
first
right.
and second generation
Yeah,
families in
there's so
Franklin
many.
from Croatia,
Yeah.
Serbia.
Yeah.
Serbia is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even people here that still speak Polish at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Polish.
Yeah. So yeah, this speaks to a level of diversity that maybe the race statistics won't, but the language is revealing a little bit more.
There's a lot of hidden
Yeah. Yeah.
that aren't necessarily represented. But
Because yeah, if we're talking about some of those Eastern European, that's going to be represented here in what we might consider white, right? But they still are having a diversity and probably that first or second generation immigrant experience as well.
Yeah, because one of the things did say what, is it that statistic? Foreign born, yeah.
Yeah.
And that way I thought was pretty, like, that was higher than I thought it would have been.
Yeah, definitely. And this concept, again, without saying this not as a political statement, but someone who is not a U.S. citizen who is here, being 32% of that number, that's not a small percentage of what's, maybe not a large number, that's not a small percentage. So that too speaks to
That's what
newly immigrated, coming here for a job, coming here for other family members. So that's really, I think, an important facet for us to think about as well. Because those are often people that we perceive as the library being a place that can be helpful to them for a variety of reasons, for resources, for family time, for educational purposes, language purposes. Those are all valid reasons that individuals would come to the library. Then we get into, I think the number that maybe wasn't surprising is our population of older adults. So just slightly above the state average, but I mean, nearly 20% of your population is 65 years and older. In some of the library terms, we might think of older adults as maybe 55 plus. 65 is more of a government term because there are benefits and sort of you're nearing that retirement age. So if we're thinking about these percentages here, you've got 10 at 65 to 74. You've got about 6.7% at 75 to 84. And a group that's still kicking it at 85 plus, so that's amazing, right? And that also probably, again, is speaking to what housing is available, quality of life in a community like this, and also likely access to medical. You're not going to live a long life if you don't have access to your doctors, your clinics, et cetera. Anything else that anybody wants to say on this part of the population?
I think that 95% of them come to the library.
I do think so.
A core group of users?
Yes,
we
Yeah,
do.
okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm curious, with all of the senior apartments, services that are available here, do you see buses? Do they have buses that come to the library? Because they.
We used to see more than we do now.
Yeah, for sure, we used to see more.
I mean, I feel like before COVID, we saw more, and now, not as much.
Yeah.
A lot of services
I think some of those
have
patterns
started
have
up.
changed.
Still haven't started.
That's another thing that I've heard about Franklin with the older and aging populations is that there's like the groups that are 85 plus, but then there's also a really big growing population of people that are just post-retirement that feel like they don't identify in the same social circle as the
Yeah,
people that are 85
yeah,
plus.
yeah.
But then a lot of the resources we have are kind of targeted toward that 85 plus group.
Yeah.
So the just post-retirement, like under 75 group is a little bit sometimes lost.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in the course that I teach. What are the differences between what a 55-year-old needs,
Totally
a
different.
75-year-old needs, and a 95-year-old
Yeah.
needs?
Right.
I mean, you might even be
Yeah.
in two different generations
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't they have like, my into them for a little while, like the apartments that are, I think they're like 55 and older, or like 60
Yeah.
and older
Yeah.
apartments.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're not like assisted living, where you're gonna eventually,
right,
or the apartments that
Yeah,
turn
you don't-
into assisted living.
right. You don't
know,
transition
they're-
over to the other wing.
Right, they're
Yeah.
just like plain old, like, people in their
Right.
like 60s
Right.
that are just,
Right.
you can't have younger people because they don't want the kids and the whatevers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And you make a great point that if you said like, okay, active senior walking club, you might have some people who are like, well, I'm not an old lady, I'm not going to that.
Yeah.
And so there's that marketing piece of if you call it something, then
Right.
it will identify some people, but it will exclude others. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me keep. Did you have something else you wanted to say? Okay.
No, I don't think the statistics were super, as far as age, were super surprising.
Yeah. Veterans.
I was surprised that it was this, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if you look into a lot of the professions that veterans may go into, they aren't exactly high earning or like incomes they may necessarily be able to
Mhm.
afford to live in Franklin.
Yes, that's a good point.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Like
Trade.
public services,
Trade,
trades.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also interesting to think about what this small population, what might their needs be if they're living here. You know, did they transition into maybe a lower income and they happen to live here because they have family supports or it's closer to a job? It's probably not surprising that that number is, you know, more male than female, just based on, you know, what the makeup of the military is. But that population being really tiny, what might their unique needs be? And is there something that the library could help them benefit from?
Kind of a more aging population
They-
here in
I
Franklin.
think what
Just
they're
here in
finding-
Franklin, I mean.
I think what they're finding is they're finding it hard to find volunteers because the younger veterans are working.
Okay.
I think that's.
Okay.
So they're having a hard time getting
The volunteer, okay.
that interest in being a part of the VFW post or American Legion.
Mhm.
We have a pretty active veterans, we have 2 active veterans groups.
Yeah, yeah. And I would imagine from some of the other goings on in the community that civic pride in the veteran experience or civic pride in veterans work would also be valuable to the community as well. So then shifting gears here, income. Of course, poverty is defined by a very specific threshold that has a calculator that goes up as your household size goes up. So it's not a one size fits all number. So, you know, when we talk about poverty, we talk about people who are affected by poverty, whose lives are affected by poverty, not that they are, we don't talk about the poor, we don't talk about it in that framework, but that their income exceeds a federal government level. Now, we can also talk about that as how does poverty look in a community when your median income is $100,000? You might not be meeting the federal conditions of being poor, but what is your ability to afford a lifestyle and a home in a community in which that income level and the property value is exceedingly high? So someone may not be living in poverty, but they may be living in a very different financial situation than many in their community. Yeah.
What you're saying is exactly right. From my experience doing our health assessment, this data is very old, but I don't know if people are familiar with what ALICE is. ALICE means asset limited, income constrained, but employed.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2018, 18% of the Franklin population was considered ALICE. So that's people that are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Also doing a lot of like key informant interviews and focus groups with people that work in like the public service to serve the community.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in Franklin that, I mean, to use the phrase, are trying to keep up with the Joneses, that, you know, may outwardly not be income limited, but may have a bearing. Things
Right,
like that.
right, or a very empty refrigerator.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
working with our food pantries, they mention a lot, there may be people that are pulling up in higher income, like sports vehicles and
Mhm.
stuff, but, I mean, you don't know what their refrigerator looks like at home.
Right.
There's been a real trajectory in land values and property values also. And there were some parts of town that were built a long time ago, and a lot of those folks still consider Franklin a rural community, which is, you know, they don't want a lot of development because that's just going to ruin their memory of what Franklin was.
Right.
And so you almost have a couple of different cohorts within Franklin. You have the haves, and you have the we were here first.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, and in a community too where there still is land that could potentially be developed, whether it's for commercial, whether it's for residential, what happens to the older subdivisions when something else becomes, you know, well, this is the newest, greatest, right? So that idea of keeping up with the Joneses, of increasing land values, and then you have a core group that's like, don't develop anything, leave it just the way it is, you've already gone too far, right? You have a really interesting balance in what should be developed. How do you have more of a tax base? If you have people who want to move here, how do you have enough housing stock for the people that move here? I also want to touch on something that you said about ALICE. I've never heard it framed as ALICE, so that's going straight into my class for next semester. Thank you. But that idea too of, and that may go back to our 25 to 30 or 29 to 34-year-olds, your debt may be higher than what you can afford because you have student loans. So student loans, a mortgage, a car, because, you know, as we've said, you've got to have a car to get around. All those things really knock that median income down. You're really chipping away at $100,000 as your income if you've got a lot of that debt piling up. So we can see that this is definitely a county that has, or excuse me, a city that has an above average income, but that may not be true for everyone that we're encountering, which I think we all can nod our heads and recognize
We
that.
always said there are pockets of poverty.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, in every community.
And your comment about the people is really the subdivision in Franklin, but around our subdivision, that was all farmland when I first moved here. And there are homes that were here. And those are the same people living in those old,
Yeah,
and it's very different.
Yeah.
Very different from the subdivision.
Yeah.
They're not moving.
yeah. Well, and that also speaks to one of the numbers on a previous section of this that was at, it was like 1.1% are new movers, which tells me people are staying put. So even if they've maybe changed a school district or they've retired, they're not leaving, they're staying here. So that too can tie into that. I've moved here and I'm very happy here and I have all the things I need here and I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And then just to reiterate here with our poverty statistics, again, while we are below the state average, this number's not zero. And to your point, Jennifer, right? We know that there are pockets of people who are living in poverty, whether it's the federally defined term of poverty or that, not having enough income to overcome the expenses of your life. We know that exists. And the interesting thing to me here is this number, that 65 years and older are the largest segment of what we would consider poverty. And what does that due to? Have they stopped working? Have they lost a partner or a spouse? You know, they may own their home at that point, but there still may be medical expenses that they're undergoing. So thinking about older adults and poverty, what are the things that the library can assist and support that community with? See, sometimes these take a sec to load. Okay, education. Anything in this section? We're above that state average with about 43% as attaining a bachelor's degree or higher. Probably plays into income attainment, right?
Yeah.
That 25-minute commute, as we'll see in a minute, right? If you've got a degree, you're probably working a professional job. And then school enrollment. So 75% are enrolled kindergarten to 12th grade, which is higher than the state average. Bulk of them are that K through 12, right? That's just how the population size is. If 75.8% are enrolled in school, where are the other ones?
That's my question. I was wondering.
Homeschool.
Homeschool,
Yeah, there's a big homeschool community.
yeah, or something else, which
Or
is even more
whatever you choose to do.
more nebulous, right?
Unschool.
Right. Or it could be that part of this, you know, you might be of school age, but maybe you're waiting until kindergarten, so you're not enrolled in preschool. So anything on that is like, I think just knowing that we have a homeschool population, to be aware of it, yeah.
And is this the enrollment within Franklin? Because there are perhaps some students who live here but go to school somewhere else.
That's a good question. You know, I don't know if it accounts for people who are, you know, do they go to, say, Waukesha, you know, are they enrolled in New Berlin Eisenhower or Catholic Memorial? Are they going to Marquette or DSHA, or are they in
Prairie
boarding
school,
school?
right.
Yeah, are they at Prairie School? You know, that's a good question. I would need to look at the data. That could be a factor if they're further flung, but I think it's just drawing upon census data that is just, are your children attending school? And then employment, I don't think there's any real revelations here, given the other data that we've looked at. This large blue line is just that people indicate that they're an employee of a private company. Then we've got a small percentage of self-employed, not-for-profit, and then we've got state government and local workers, and then we've got another category of self-employed. So the majority are just people working for private companies, which I would say is pretty typical in this region. And then this too, I think, plays out in a lot of the comments that we've made that, you know, I don't know if I would call Franklin a bedroom community, but people are living here, probably working somewhere else, and their main method is driving alone. 0 are taking public transportation. 0.4% are walking. 0% are bicycling. There's got to be more people that ride their motorcycle because this is Wisconsin, and
Oh, yes.
once the weather gets nice, that's all you hear. So I can't believe that it's as low as 0.6%. It was interesting that carpool showed up. I don't know how many people are doing that.
I bet it's because people that own a motorcycle also own a car.
Yeah, that's true.
So their primary is probably a car.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you
Right.
can't ride your motorcycle all year round either.
And
I know.
down below that too, there's 13.2% work from home. Now,
Yeah, and I'll bet that has,
that is, I think it's changed.
and I would imagine that has grown. And this doesn't account for people who have the opportunity for a hybrid life. So they may say that they work in an office, they may say that they drive, but if they only go in 3 days a week or 2 days a week, what does that look like? And the other thing that I think is interesting is, if you put a pin in the library on the map and you did a circle of what's 25 minutes from here, again, we would be crossing county lines, we'd be crossing into many different communities. A 25-minute drive from Franklin gets you pretty far. So, when we think about the opportunity, how do we capture people who are maybe very busy and 25 minutes of a commute, on a good day, right? It hasn't snowed, there's no traffic, there's no, sheriff closing it down to one lane, construction season, all that stuff can tack on that time. What are the opportunities that we have for those kind of patrons, right? It's always construction season.
Construction season.
Yeah, let's go tell the DOT to knock it off. They're right next door. The other thing that's interesting too, which may be a factor in the age of your community, is that the employment rate is at 58% and the state average is 63%. So does that speak to maybe more retirees? Again, I'm just throwing a dart at the dartboard, but that could be a reason that employment number is low. That may play into as well people who are freelancers who may consider themselves a level of employed. So that I thought jumped out at me, that I would have expected a higher number, again, with that high median income.
Or it could be that the families don't have to have two incomes.
Yeah,
That one is actually-
absolutely.
I've always felt that there are a higher number of stay-at-home moms in Franklin
Yeah.
than in a lot of other places I know.
Because you see them coming for
Yeah.
the kids' programs here during the day. Sure.
And then this kind of gets into the weeds of all the different types of industries. I don't know how relevant that is for us, but it is here. And
The median, if you keep going down, the median gross rent, $1,012.
yeah.
There's no way we
I
do
know.
that anymore.
No.
I agree. I mean, I just saw a chart for City of Milwaukee,
Yeah.
and it was bonkers. Yeah,
People are paying
yeah.
more for their rent than
Yeah.
I pay for my mortgage.
For sure. So I don't want to go too much deeper in this because we will run out of time otherwise. What I want to start next is, we've talked about all these different types of data here, and we can imagine real life scenarios, we can picture things happening in our community, but now we're going to start personalizing this a little bit more. So we're going to break up into two small groups here, and hopefully we can break up library people just a little so that we can kind of mix and mingle.
Come over there.
But we're going to talk about patron profiles. If I were a marketing expert, I'd be talking about these as market segmentation or customer profiles, where we would do a really detailed description of, say, a white woman who's 44 years old, who is really good at filling out surveys, has 2 children, has a bachelor's degree, and then it would be me, and I would be the archetype for that customer profile, or I would be the customer profile. Archetypes are things like a voracious reader, a child who's a reluctant reader. We would have someone who's a lifelong learner, an active senior. So we're kind of blending these two strategies of what's a type of library user, a library patron, and what would be the things that we would use to describe that person. So we're kind of blending the archetypes or the caricatures with kind of a profile of something about maybe their demographic. And we want to just stick to really basic. We don't have to build a character. We're not writing a movie or anything like that. So we want to stick to some basic profiles here. But this is going to help us understand the motivations, the interests, the needs of our patrons, and then we'll do an exercise to figure out how we might meet that patron's needs very well. So I'll give you guys a couple of sheets of paper and you can just brainstorm. I want you to think of as many patron profiles as you can. So you can give it a name, which again, I can use a very generic one, you know, active senior, loves going for walks, loves birding and working in the garden, you know, the end. Sometimes it's fun to think about, you know, dislikes noisy children's room. You know, it can be fun to put that in there if you want. But it's your job to just come up with as many patron profiles as you can. Give it a name, a brief description, and kind of what you view this profile like. So one of you will get to be the recorder for your group. Do you have the best handwriting? Or you just like writing?
I like to think I am.
Okay.
You know?
You write or what's your face and talk
All right, go ahead, pick the color. Great choice. And then who would like to be the recorder on this side? I'm gonna stick it right here on the end, but I'm not forcing you, Sarah.
Why do you look at me, man?
I'll take notes since I don't have to talk.
She's saying please with her eyes.
I'm not writing. I am terrible.
So we'll get the duct tape on this.
Right, okay, great, that's right.
You're good at talking.
All right.
Too much.
No, I like it. It's one of my.
And if you want me to go back to any info,
All right, you're right.
Thinking this is the dividing line, right?
the second you create one of these, the information is out of date, right?
It's
It can't be.
When I did this, I pulled it down.
Yeah.
And the median
Okay.
all 86,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he had to leave.
okay.
Yeah, it was
The world is changing.
yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Very crazy.
You have good handwriting.
That was bad. Please let me prove myself.
There aren't listing the patron, so if you're gonna.
So a name and then 1 to 2 sentence description.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so do you want me to
I'll
just
fill
write
it
it?
I'll fill it out there.
Okay.
The bookworm.
Bookworm.
All right, so this could be any age though.
Right, what age are you?
Yeah. You know, has to have a book.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So it's best.
Right, so
like-
it comes to the library because we need, I'm reading it online,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Okay,
not
I
gonna
see.
get a kid,
Oh,
no.
okay. So
Right.
I
It's like, you know,
only print
only print,
print books.
High school students, I would almost like my digital pages from.
So they're very
Like, don't like a name.
particular.
And it worked out because,
Or just any print book will do.
They don't know anything else.
With digital.
Yeah, I think you're doing nice. It's lovely. And your handwriting is like nice. Yeah, you're doing well.
I have to write all of them.
That's it too, but nice.
We have digital systems.
I only print. Even compared to when me and Zyra.
Yeah.
I didn't have a figure.
I didn't either, I just found
feel
it.
free to just jump on it.
Yeah,
They're not the ones that
there aren't a
they
lot of
info
people like
desk.
that.
I know what I want, I go get it.
What was that? The other day I asked my dad.
Yeah, maybe
have
we
additional
could
ones
include that where they don't come to the desk, they
No
don't
way,
have
there's a
the
time.
self-sufficient.
Oh, yeah, the
Come
self-serve.
this time,
I
I
don't
know what
Yeah.
they sell.
That's so
Usually I love them.
We had one little.
I agree.
I was like.
I do too.
The ideal.
Yeah, right? Did you do
So we
that?
started one.
Or
high
there,
school
then
student.
there's the hand.
I would say like.
Yeah, that can be our next one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I do love names. I read this one book.
They don't know anything else.
By the way, I
Let's
today
let's come up with another. Another idea.
Yeah, listening to this on the
They don't know
podcast,
anything
is I
else.
did their on.
Oh my God! Did you love it or what?
I did.
I wanted to like write April and be like, could you come to my house and be my best friend? I love you. I'm glad you like my recommendation.
No, because we own the book.
Oh, you
I knew I was never gonna have time to sit down and read
Yeah.
it, so I
Should we
was
call
like,
it library?
Carrie says it's a.
No, we're still working on.
I just like, listening to talk over.
Sorry, how would you be like talking like it was a poem or whatever, and it'd just be that F bomb.
Hey, Doris.
We have.
Doris, you're on library.
Describe yourself. Describe yourself.
Golden Agers.
16 kids. No,
Yeah.
You're just one.
I lose one all the time.
Super adults.
Yeah, it's gonna be story time, Mom, yeah.
Adults to the second power.
Exactly, lives in the kids area, probably has a relationship with the children's library.
They do everything, and the kids.
I know their birthday.
Actually, yeah, that's a
Kids
really
are very,
Story
people are
time.
committed.
Yeah, maybe tired mothers.
Checks out, I mean, you gotta put like checks out
Mother's Week.
lots of
Yes.
those, lots of
pictures.
you know, there, and it is in every week, you know,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
that like.
for sure, yeah.
And
Working
registers for
moms,
like
stay-at-home
all
moms, there's
kid
two
programs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
And they're all
for
tired.
Yes.
I often wonder if
Both are
I would
tired.
be a library mom if I didn't work.
Now you see it.
Yes,
Or would
you
I be
would.
like,
I
Oh
was
my
a
God, I
library
wanna go to
mom,
the
and that's how I
library.
became a
But they
library
are
mom.
here. I was in here one day.
It's a slippery slope.
I definitely think we should put the hand holder.
Yeah, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
would say like,
Because they show up at your library day by day. They, like, that door count.
I don't think there's a meeting or league when there isn't somebody standing over by
Yeah.
the desk.
Yeah.
Yes.
or like
Our-
wanna
Lauren-
use the like.
Lauren grabbing
Then I
those
think we
adult
okay, so handhold it first,
programs
I'll say.
And that's just definitely
Like,
somebody
you
who
know,
like
Carrie can tell
can't
you
do
she's-
anything.
It's on the computer and waves you over 20 times.
Well, they just literally cannot do anything on their own, and you have to
Laura just
explain
puts a little
everything to
flyer
them.
out, gets like 20.
And
That's fantastic.
they're
Yeah.
different than the
That's
person
your
who
new-
doesn't want to.
That's your new
This is the
audience.
person that doesn't
Right.
For sure.
understand or is too
Those
afraid
at a library. I would say.
to do it.
Yeah, don't give me a brochure.
What about the person
Help.
that comes in just to
Help.
talk?
Even though it's
Help
very
me.
small.
Don't say here, this will do it for you, right?
The
They're
person
not
that comes in to
self-sufficient.
talk, no, that's a different person.
Wait, one more for the hand holder.
So they're definitely not self-sufficient.
Not
Not
self-sufficient.
They need you to walk them through it step by step,
Yeah.
Tech seeking
We
plus
used to
like.
have.
which is different than the people who
Well, because
just expect you to do it.
So it has
Those
like,
are
oh, here,
just
because-
resources.
Yeah, where you're coming here because you know that
So, I think everybody.
the computer will be reliable, the Wi-Fi will be reliable.
No, I don't want you to, I just want you to do it. Don't explain. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Somebody else did it for me the other day.
Oh, I hate getting that.
You guys have a bunch. Do you guys have at least 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have,
But I have a lot more than I can talk about.
this is Carrie's
We're
like,
going too slow.
I
I know,
rental
well,
all
I let us linger on that dad too, and that's my fault. But we were having an
Don't
interesting
really put
conversation.
don't.
and I know.
Call it something else.
You could call it,
The demander.
cranky owl.
Or demanding,
Yeah.
cranky / demanding /
Yeah.
humor. Because it's always them. It's almost always them.
I pay your wages.
What do you want me to call it?
Especially seeking.
Cranky,
Yeah,
demanding.
I think the cranky.
Cranky and demanding.
Yes.
Although
Cranky
have-
demander.
Kind of go in
Yeah.
hand.
They have high expectations and
So
they
using that
seem to
sort
be
of-
unsatisfied with a lot.
Yeah.
I actually,
It
that
may,
is.
it may be
That's
reassuring.
perfect. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
What did I say?
High expectations and then
Just to be around.
totally unhappy with the
Yeah.
service they get.
Expectations. And sometimes low key.
I would go with 99.9% of the time location.
Yeah.
I came in here to do this, like, did you just do it?
Yes.
Not that easy.
What was,
Expectations,
locations unhappy with service?
Yep.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
No matter what you
15
do.
years ago, we were talking about how long.
All right, once you're done
One
writing,
more, didn't we?
What were they discussing?
I want you to share one with the other group.
Yes.
Oh, I love that when they just Yeah. Totally.
Sometimes they
All
are
right.
like, I'm like, no, it's
Decide
not.
which
Shouldn't
one
even
you
know that.
want to share with the other group.
Share too
What do you
much.
think what do you think the other group doesn't have?
They share too much.
Share too much.
No, for
How are
sure.
we sharing?
I want you to decide which one you think the other group doesn't have.
Cranky demander. Jennifer's a big
You don't think so?
You're right.
She just doesn't get the cranky demander.
Wait, chatter shares too much. Thank you. Librarians know that life story.
All right, you can just stay in your groups. You can just stay in your groups because we're gonna go right back to the next activity.
They're lonely.
All right,
That's really nice.
do you guys have your last one
Yeah.
settled? Okay.
Yeah.
On your list, what do you think you have that this group does not have?
He said English learners who maybe come to like assimilate and like kind of put themselves through learning.
We're not laughing at you.
Okay.
Yours are all, I bet, really nice and friendly.
And that's okay. And what do you have?
Yeah, you guys are looking kind of bare over there.
What do you have that you think this group doesn't have?
Oh, I'm talking.
Oh, sorry.
Sarah said she didn't want to talk.
Okay, I'll do it because I was the one that came up. I didn't come up with it. They're here every day. Cranky demander.
Oh, well,
High expectations,
I didn't know.
low patience, and unhappy with everything you do. Cranky demander. Every day, all the time.
Okay.
It's true.
So, this group, hold up yours.
Nice bears
This
are.
group, hold up yours, and then let's just do a quick.
That's the like least nice thing they said.
Just do a quick visual scan. Quick visual scan. Okay.
Well, we did say library mom, yeah, we said the library mom, we said they're tired.
They are tired. Okay. So we've got a little bit of overlap here, right? Okay. So now we're gonna flip the script. All right. So you're gonna tear off your sheets and give it to this group. This group is gonna give the sheet to this group.
Good luck.
There you go.
Right.
You'll
You
think
know the person that shares too much. They start talking about their alcoholic uncle, and you're like, I have a job to do.
Or let me show you my.
All the time.
Let me show you my foot. What's what's
So
wrong
I
with
have
it?
this medical ailment and I need help. Could I just show you this? No, we're not. I do not want to see this.
All right.
Yeah, or whatever.
Here's your next task.
Yeah.
All right, so your next task as a group, you're gonna pick one profile.
She doesn't come to us.
You're gonna pick one profile, and we're gonna do a journey map. And this map is to understand the user's experience. So whatever you pick, go ahead and like circle it, put a star next to it, put it at the top of your next sheet. So you'll be identifying one user, one single user, and then you're going to think about how is that person engaging with the library. So let's just say it's a digital native. I'm going to use Libby. I'm going to use Hoopla. I never come into the library. I never ask anybody a question. I just check out my books on those two platforms. What are my sticking points? What am I missing? What is my journey? If I never set foot in the library, what am I missing out on? Or what's easy for me? So I know, probably not. We only have 5 minutes.
Okay.
So you're walking this person through all the positives and negatives of what this experience might be like. So it all depends on the journey they're on, which patron you choose. Okay, so you'll be thinking about how would they use the library, what do they encounter, and that's going to help us understand what their needs are and how we can best serve them. Okay, so go ahead, pick one and start brainstorming.
Do you know what a super adult is?
They mean it as like instead of calling someone a senior citizen. So super adult, so like adult to the second power, adult is seasoning, adult.
Okay. I was confused by that.
Mature adult.
What if we do culture?
We could put up another.
Right or not? Nobody wants to do the challenge.
Well, here, I'll start with one for you. What happens when that adult encounters your website? What happens when that culturally seeking adult walks through your doors? What do they see? What are the things that work for them? What are the things that don't? So that could be your jumping off point. And
By
then you can-
culturally seeking, they're looking for diversity and
Yeah.
multicultural.
Yeah, so think about what they're gonna
Representation.
encounter.
Okay.
All right, so they check you out online, they check you out.
So, yeah, everything is in English. Every single thing in our library is in English.
All right, did you guys pick one? Okay, great. Libraries, look more. Okay.
I want to do Hoopla lovers.
Yeah,
Do you want
so-
guidance?
So you're jumping
That's
on
like
point
so
could be
specific.
They come in.
Like, you have to pick something that's
Yeah.
challenging.
Catalog or they.
Okay.
So then
So when they encounter our website, it's definitely, I mean, like, there is a vary with language, so I would say like language.
Okay, let's just go when they walk in.
When they walk in.
Okay,
the
because
door.
we have, sure, they might have some
Right, right.
already.
Yeah, whatever.
Let's go when they walk in.
I'm just basically writing what
When
you
they
guys
walk in
Okay,
the
so
door,
then
I
they
think
throw a wrench in
they
this.
encounter friendly
There's a book
people.
they really
Yeah.
want, they
Friendly
place it on
staff.
hold.
Do they
That
do they
book
actually
is
see
coming
something?
for many.
I mean, not
Usually
immediately,
or-
maybe reader.
Or
But
they
when they
come
walk
here
through the
and, they
Gates,
encounter
they
some
should
difficult
encounter
stuff.
someone else.
So start thinking
At the
about
checkout.
where might this journey
Do they know where
define?
to go?
Yeah.
Self-checkout is good.
No.
Yeah.
Counter-friendly staff.
So think about how they might find a sticking
You know,
point in that journey and what they might do.
I mean, usually
Just
self-check is
navigating the library?
Navigating
Navigating the library is gonna be a
waiting
challenge?
list on their book.
Hours.
Navigating the library?
Yeah, I would just write that it's gonna be a challenge because everything is in English, so.
Yeah.
Challenge, navigating.
Do we
Well,
have?
for anybody, if anybody just coming into the library from another community and they're coming in and
That's
this is.
any
I mean, it's personal.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yes, you encounter that, but like.
Do we have any kind of mappage that shows?
Like a visual of the
I don't
library?
believe we do.
But how helpful would that be for someone who speaks another
Well, I was
language?
thinking if there was any.
It's like 100.
So they probably like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
some
Oh,
sort
yeah.
that would be on it.
But yeah, you could make it a
I know,
visual
I get
instead of
frustrated
having
on
words, so
Right.
like at the checkout desk, you could some have
Oh,
like
yeah,
a,
that's me too.
like something that would represent books getting checked out, and by the information desk, you could have question marks, because that's kind of,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, universal, like questions, I have a question, I go to this desk.
That does
The
happen.
kids are in there like little bunnies or this, but I think we should have a visual, like,
Sometimes people don't tell us that.
This is how they view the library now though, right? Like,
not what we
Yeah.
do.
not what we can do about it,
And
but
you
like
can
how
certainly
they
note
can.
that on it, but yeah, like, I think it's great that you encountered a challenge, challenge might be wayfinding. They might overcome that, then what happens next? You know, are they, do we think they're coming to use
They don't
the
come to
physical
us and
collection,
tell
do you
you
think
that.
they're coming to?
So we are, so we, I guess, so we do have multicultural books in different languages, so that is something that we do have that they can have.
So they might encounter books in their own language.
They might.
Okay.
And if they're coming to use the computers, maybe, I mean, that's something,
Yeah.
there's still a little barrier there, because if they don't have a library card, they'd have to ask for a test.
Okay. So let's put that on there, that if they needed technology, then there might be a mediation that happens with that library
Yeah.
card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're very.
which again, could be overcome, but just might be a sticking point if they're here for that first time.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so with my writing.
Okay,
They may need
journey here?
help getting the library
we're
card
almost at time.
Yeah, we are.
for technology.
Oh, and-
To be able to
and-
get technology. Or do you wanna write that?
Okay.
Yeah, we can wrap this.
Yeah, and you could do slash, accessing technology.
Even like when it's trunk or treat and you come
Oh,
in,
yeah.
there's 1,000 people here. Or if you usually come in on Mondays,
I know,
it's
it's another-
National Night Out thing. Or if it's
We are not
hot and it's
diverse
being
as a
used as a
staff.
polling center.
Yeah.
There's very low diversity in our staff. That is not necessarily something we can do anything about.
Yeah.
You can.
Traditionally, most people.
Or the senior book fair and you can't
Reply.
ask for the book nook.
I know, I had my course that I teach, we look at some ALA data and the profession is over 85% white.
Yeah.
I mean, just, and that's national.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get.
From the printed books.
So this would be just a question for my curiosity.
You know, it's interesting. It was
If you would
fun.
have a really relevant program, would you have an interpreter? Is that something that you've ever
Publishers in
done?
general have
So,
found that if
we
you
don't
don't
have
have
a
the
ton
ebooks with this.
Yeah, because another issue. So we've had Indian
Even
dance
my daughter will
dance groups,
I
and
just want the print, I don't wanna read it on my computer.
there's no, and the people who are doing them are, it's the Indian dance group themselves. We
Right.
just
Right.
work with them.
Right, they're coming as a performer.
So they
yeah.
speak in English.
Right.
And they do not have somebody speaking, you know, in a different language, interpreting for them. I think it
Well, and
would
that
be really
goes
hard
into, we
because
talked
we
about
do
our
have
self-help books.
mostly English-speaking people, but then we do have some with what language.
Right, and it's always
And
meeting the need in the moment, right? Meeting that need when someone is right in front of you.
Yeah,
So this one definitely for someone for whom English may not be their
primary language, that one could be the
I
first
wonder if
hurdle,
something,
no
because
matter
that's
what's
also
happening in your building, your physical space, right? If you can't have a deep dialogue with a patron, that's your hard challenge.
Yes,
Have you seen that commercial where the guy is in another country and speaks English and he talks into his phone?
Yeah.
And the guy, the Uber driver hears it in his language? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
Because
crazy.
they don't
Do
stop,
that, which
you know, they come in.
You could have interpretive technology.
you could
I-
have interpretation.
I did work at a very large library where we had phone interpretation, and so you would just dial a number, and then you would just move the phone back and forth. You paid by the call, but man, in the moment,
Yeah.
it was incredibly helpful. Clunky, but
My mom is
Still,
like.
they-
Yeah.
yes, we could make it happen.
That's okay.
Sure.
We get-
Okay, so before we go way over time, I just want you to share a little bit about your journey.
She has to go.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you so much for your beautiful penmanship and your contributions. So what do you want to tell us about your bookworm journey? Did you have anything that was like, we nailed it, and other thing? Did you have anything that was a challenge on their journey?
Yeah, I mean, bookworm being one of those people, and we know they're out there, they know what they want, they look it up, they come in, they get it, they check it out at the self-check, and they leave, and have no interaction with staff.
Right, totally self-sufficient,
So,
right?
however, you lose an opportunity of telling them about the library, because they don't stop long enough to like learn
Bye.
something about the library.
Right. So if we're thinking about that being the challenge, that you never really connect with them directly, what is something that you could quickly think about that might be a way to reach that group?
Do they use the self-checkout?
Yeah.
Well, when they check out their book, before they ask them if they want a receipt or something, pop something up that, just happens to be something random about another service.
The new
Like,
screen, right? Yeah. Can the new screen show coming soon? What
I mean,
about?
our current ones can't, but we're looking
Yeah.
next year as a.
Or
Next
every
year.
time.
Right? Is that a possibility? Is the technology a possibility?
Wait,
What
next
about-
year, I thought we were getting that way earlier than that.
What about book slips in the holds, right? If you had summer reading is coming soon, sign up for adult summer reading. The buck slips in the books can be a way to reach them even if you can't speak with them. How many of you who are library employees have spoken to someone who's at self-checkout? Like, hey, did you find everything you need? Thanks for coming. We'll see you again soon. I know we don't love retail customer service infringing upon libraries, but I've done it. Patrons sometimes are like, don't talk to me, and that's fine. That's fine.
You remember their
I'll just keep blabbering on. But right, you have that opportunity too to kind of catch them where they're at.
We do have the library information around the self-check.
Right,
so-
having that passive
but,
display.
Again,
Yeah.
it's not,
They're like this.
yes, that's what I said.
Right. You just need to put something at the top like free money or prizes inside. All right, you
See you later.
chose the cultural seeking.
Somebody wanted to be.
I wanted to check.
You
pick
picked a challenge. Okay. What
What's the easy way out?
what happened on your journey with your culturally seeking patron?
Well, they walked in the door and they encountered friendly staff. I think
That's great.
That no matter
Yeah.
what language you speak, you will find friendly staff.
Yeah.
However, we did identify many challenges. Mostly challenges. So,
We found things to put on our plan.
yeah, they would have a challenge navigating the library without reading in English.
Mhm.
Everything, signage, everything's in English, right? But we do have books in foreign languages, and especially in kids. I think you guys have a lot more languages than an adult. So there's that positive, right? They will hopefully find their way to those foreign language
And I
books.
have bilingual box.
Oh, you do?
books. I bought
Oh,
some
sweet.
bilingual ones.
Great, go Sarah.
I have to buy more.
So that's a positive, that we just have to make sure that they can find their way to them, right? And then, the other thing that I think these maybe kind of go hand in hand, and two, like, this isn't a knock on the library, but we have very low staff diversity. However, Rachel and I, we were just talking, like, 85%
the profession
of
is-
the profession is white.
profession
So
is
it's
white.
very hard to attract diverse applicants,
Mhm.
especially out here in Franklin.
Mhm.
You know, it's a drive potentially for people. Again, no public transportation, etc. So the people that are coming in that, may be needing a library card or accessing the computers, they might have a little more trouble communicating that, because maybe there's nobody, I don't think there's anyone on staff that speaks even Spanish, correct? Mine is sad.
I know some, but.
I can't carry on a conversation.
But your phones can translate.
Yes.
Which,
That's what we
so
talked
that's
about.
the thing,
That's helpful.
is that something we need to implement actually using? And,
Yeah. I mean, I do it with Bernardo.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And-
how Bernardo and I communicate.
And I think
You
one
should
of the
just say,
other,
"Hello, how are you?"
one of the other challenges that I think I could hear you working through is culturally seeking might be coming here for so many reasons. They might be coming here because their children are coming here. They might be coming here for the computers and technology specifically. They might be coming here just to information seek and just gather what's in my new community. They may be here for school reasons or work reasons. So mapping that journey is really difficult when they might walk through the door with, a multi-generational family and have 6 different needs at once. So that you definitely picked a challenge in yours.
And I do want to just quickly add that we
Yeah.
do have that though. Like
Yeah.
I often see families from grandma all the way down to the littles.
Yeah.
And littles are translating for their
Yeah.
adults,
Yeah.
which is
True.
wonderful,
Mhm.
and even I've seen it more too. I've actually encountered a lot more Spanish speaking people utilizing Franklin. And a lot of times it's their adult child with their mother, father, grandma, grandpa, taking them to the library, showing them around.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ask for the Spanish language books, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, we don't have any.
Yeah.
So it is and there's more people coming, but again, that's probably about 10 people a year.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot. And if we're gonna add Spanish into our foreign language,
Yeah.
we gotta have a
More.
budget, we gotta have more money.
Yeah.
But you're also touching on something that speaks to what the building also needs, is that intergenerational need of can a child, a grandparent, and that sandwich generation person, can they all find what they need in the space? Can they all be comfortable in the space? Can they all find all the things that they need within the space? Language barrier aside, is there something, from youth to, what do we call them, super adults?
Super adults.
To super adults,
Yeah.
right, and everything in between. So that's the challenge inherent as well, besides just the language barrier.
How do you feel about libraries as silos? One of the things that we tend to do is we tend to think of, okay, we have Franklin Public Library, we have our customers,
Right.
and I think of, what's that Christmas movie? Miracle on 34th Street, right? Where the guy at Macy's says, well, the salesperson says, well, we don't have it, but you can go to Gimbel. Do we know
Yeah.
what other libraries have, and should we
Yeah.
maybe be looking more at the library as a system where we don't have it, but if you go over there, they have
Yeah.
exactly what you need, and we all don't have to do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Years
Yes,
years
we do that.
ago, we used to, I remember we'd have Spanish language
Yeah.
speakers in, and we oftentimes we sent them to like Forest Home, because Forest Home Library, which is now Mitchell Street,
Mitchell,
they had a good collection, and that was,
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
send
it's-
people to Mitchell.
It's
because
a
they have huge
benefit,
collection.
it's a benefit of the physical collection, and this, you're touching on something that's great that I can speak to because I am helping McFliss with their strategic plan at almost the same time as yours. We're just about wrapping theirs up. But that came up of that information and collection sharing for library directors to sort of know, like, who's the expert at, who has seniors as a primary expertise area, who has youth services as their primary areas of expertise, so that the library directors can lean on one another and be able to say, okay, they may not be the end-all be-all, but this storehouse has more information about XYZ than our library does. But it's hard to be truly siloed because in the end, most communities have that same depth of, you have to serve everyone. You have to serve everyone from, early reader to the super adult life cycle. So in a way, you're specializing with what you have in front of you, but because as we know, populations change, that's why these strategic planning meetings are so important of what's going to happen in the next 5 years. We may not serve everyone equally, but how can we equitably manage serving the primary groups that we're seeing
Sure.
that we're seeing at our library. So these are really helpful. I'll take photos of all of our notes and share them. But we've already come up with some good questions that we need to answer. So we really need to be continuing to think about what we want to have go in that survey and what we want to learn from our community focus groups. So we'll spend our whole time at the next meeting pretty much on that. I'll have some drafts for you so that we'll be kind of honing in on some things.
I think I'm gonna start sending out the email asking you guys for community conversation participants.
Yeah, I think the biggest key is if you have people that you want invited, that you know can contribute, that you know
That kind of
will
fits-
share.
Kind of fits some of these demographics with the.
Absolutely.
We want to have a good, diverse, in all ways, not just racially, but also
Age, yeah, if you can think of people in different professions, people who maybe are newer to Franklin, people who've been here for a long time, like just think about all the different perspectives that we shared tonight, and think about people who might fit some of those profiles.
So I'll send an email out.
Yeah.
And they don't have their own way of learning.
No,
Not
and
at all.
actually, you know
Yeah.
what? Love to have the perspective of
right.
non-library users.
Right.
Those are the hardest ones to capture
Yeah.
in many, many ways. So.
That would be helpful.